Okay, this is 1.3. Call it Part A or Day 1 or whatever you want to call it. 1.3 is split up over 2 lessons. Not necessarily because we're really doing anything different in the 2 lessons. There's one subtle little difference. It's largely because this objective here in 1.3 is it can be tricky enough that it's worth a couple lessons and in class to spend a couple days on. The goal is relatively simple. Going about it can be a little bit difficult. We want to take some basic information and determine from that information an equation's line in general form. Okay, it's important at this point in time to kind of be really clear on the different forms of lines. To start with, we have slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. General form, and you will notice in the instructions that this is the form we have to get our equation to in order to be done. Point slope form, I want to add to this, if we slightly rearrange this formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where m is the slope and x1, y1 is one point that we know is on the line that we are trying to find the equation of. Okay, that's going to be a useful form for us to use. Okay, a lot of times it's our starting point based on the information we have. All right, I am going to head right up here to get us going on an example. All right, so here we are. We've got some information. We want to find the equation of a line, and we know a couple things about it. It has an x-intercept of 8, and it has a y-intercept of 4. Okay, what we need to think of that now is this first part here that has an x-intercept of 8, is that tells us this line goes through the coordinate point 8, 0. Okay, that's really the meaning of an x-intercept, is what x value does it hit when it crosses the y-axis, and here it's 8. The y-intercept is 4, which means this line also goes through the point 0,4. Having 2 points is always enough information to come up with the equation that goes through that line. Okay, and here's the basic process that we would go through to do it. One of the very first things I always want to have is the slope. Okay, and for the most part, if you don't have it to start the problem, it's a pretty safe bet that you want to find it first thing. Okay, this problem is no exception. Essentially what I got here was 2 coordinate points, an x-intercept and a y-intercept. And from there, I need to find the slope. Okay, I'm going to need it to move forward with this problem. Okay, so the change in y here would be 4 minus 0 over 0 minus 8. That would be 4 over negative 8, or negative 1/2. Okay, I'm going to kind of separate this work from the rest of the problem here, but more often than not, you'll find that's a great place to start, is to find your slope. Okay, at this point, I'm going to jump to slope-intercept form because I've now got my slope, but I also have my y-intercept. This problem was kind of nice that way, that I already have it. And here's where we have to pay, special attention to whatever form the instructions tell us to find. Okay? If it's said to find the equation in slope-intercept form, we'd be done. However, it doesn't. It says to find it in general form. So there's a couple things I need to do. One thing about general form is I can't have any fractions. But I notice here the fraction I have has a denominator of 2, and you will notice this pattern throughout every example. Whatever that denominator is, you can go through and multiply every term by whatever that is, which means this equation would be 2y minus x plus 8, and my situation with the fractions is gone. The last step I would have to take to get this to general form would be to add x to both sides. Those would cancel, and I would end up with x plus 2y equals 8, and that is my final answer. I have the equation of this line that goes through the points 8, 0, and 0, negative 4, and I have found that equation in general form, which is all I have been asked to do. Okay? Let's go ahead and scroll down here, and I think I just want to work through one more. This will be good. Work through this one. Similar problem, but the 2 points that I have are not intercepts. Okay, which changes things a little bit, not a lot. What's not going to change is that the very, very first thing I need to do is find the slope. Okay, like that other problem we just did, I have 2 points. Okay, it just so happens that these points aren't the x and y intercept. Okay, but I still want to find the slope first. So I will do 4 minus negative 2 over 1 minus 5. And that will end up giving me 6 over negative 4, which in simplest terms would be negative 3/2. Okay? Negative 3 over 2. Okay, now I can't jump straight to slope-intercept form. This is the point where I have to go to point-slope form. Okay, so I'm going to choose this point right here. I could choose the other point, 5, negative 2, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to combine that with the fact that I know the slope, negative 3 over 2. And I'm going to use point-slope form, which would say that my y variable, minus 4, must be equal to negative 3/2 times the x variable, minus 1. Okay? Now here, if the instructions were to put the equation into point-slope form, I'd be done, but it doesn't specify, and if you saw back on the first slide, if it doesn't say which form to go to, we're to assume general. Okay? So I have a little bit of work to do. First thing I am going to do is to distribute and get rid of these parentheses on the right side. Which will turn the right side of the equation into negative 3/2 times x plus 3/2. Okay? You may notice here that my fraction situation is back. Okay? And as I mentioned, if I wanted to at this point in time, I could take the entire equation, okay, the entire thing, and distribute a 2 over every single term, making it 2y minus 8 equals negative 3x plus 3. Okay? All my fractions are gone, and at this point, I'm just left to do a little bit of rearranging. Now, I'm kind of running out of space, and I actually have 2 steps that I need to do. So I'm going to do 2 at once. Okay? It's just 2 steps of inverse operations. The first would be to add 8 to both sides. And I also need to add 3x to both sides. Now here, negative 8 plus 8 will cancel. Here, negative 3x plus 3x will cancel. And what I'm left with is, on the left side, I have 3x plus 2y. And over on the right, I have 3 plus 8, which equals 11. And that is the point where I will call it quits. 2x plus 3y equals 11. Okay? I hope you saw the similarities between the two examples. Even though they had slightly different information, there was still a common theme that we had 2 points. And point slope form is where we start, and then we really just have a lot of algebra to do, a lot of simplifying inverse operations to get it to that general form. All right, that's all for 1.3 part 1. We'll be doing more of the same with a couple little different wrinkles in 1.3 part 2.